When did your feeling about something is very wrong here turned out to be true? My dad was 6. Dad heard a clap of thunder and immediately told the babysitter to call someone because my dad's been struck by lightning. My grandfather had in fact been struck directly by lightning while playing golf with my grandmother. The electricity entered his shoulder and out his ankle. My grandmother resuscitated my grandfather and he lived to be over 90. Exactly 1 year ago today, we finally headed to the NICU with our perfectly healthy, just sleepy baby daughter who'd been discharged from labor and delivery a week before. I have had one healthy baby. This baby, I knew something was wrong with her right away. She never cried, didn't open her eyes, didn't nurse, didn't have any reflexes. Somehow this didn't set off any red flags during our 2-day stay in the hospital after her birth. We were discharged and told that she was just sleepy because she was born at 37 weeks. Well, we ended up dripping milk down her throat for an entire week, waiting for her to come around. We took her to the pediatrician, had a home health nurse come, had a lactation consultant come. They all said the same thing. 37 weeks, sleepy, she'll get the hang of it, blah blah blah. I had been airing my concerns to anyone who would listen before she was even born. She never moved in utero, only a wiggle every now and then to let me know she wasn't dead. Yet, all pregnancies are different, all babies are different, blah blah blah. Well, 1 year ago today, I had a screaming breakdown to my husband. Something is wrong with this baby and he still wanted to believe everything would be okay. But he agreed to take her to the NICU. And she was alternating between seizure and coma every 3-5 seconds. A burst suppression pattern on EEG. Look it up for a fun read. With a completely non-functioning brain. She developed and was born that way by some cruel and nonsensical twist of fate. A Tower syndrome. 1 in 100,000 odds. She died 2 weeks later. If someone had listened to me, we never would have left the hospital and I wouldn't have spent a week trying to nurse a brain-dead baby. I'm so sorry for your loss. If this question is hurtful or rude, please ignore it. But I'm wondering if you think earlier medical attention could have prolonged her life. I've heard from other parents in similar situations that they prefer to bring their children home to die rather than keep them surrounded by machines and white coats. But I know every situation is different. Woke up one morning and our Aussie, a dog that slept every day of his 13 years on the bed with us, wasn't next to me. I felt a stab of panic that I tried to rationalize. He's just napping on the floor, or outside peeing, but it wouldn't go away. I got up and found him lying on the patio, but otherwise normal. That evening, though, he wouldn't eat. 24 hours later the vet suspected meningitis or something similar and we had to say goodbye. Such a gut punch. Even still. Went on a cruise with my family when I was 23. Before I left I was saying goodbye to my cats. The older one was 18, but in good health. As I was saying goodbye to her though, something inside me felt like I knew this the last time I would see her. A couple days later, I got a call from my friend who was watching my cats. The old cat had started puking up blood, so she was put down. I wept pretty hard that day, but I was grateful that a part of me knew to say goodbye like it was the last time. I befriended an elderly man after a middle school project about World War II. He served on the USS San Francisco, and I continued to visit with him weekly or so all the way through high school. His house was on the way home from school and I would often call to tell him I was coming and then drop by after practice. Being a 92-year-old man, he didn't have a ton going on, but occasionally had appointments and such that took him out of the house. One day I called and he didn't pick up the phone. Not super strange, given the aforementioned appointments, but I just had this sinking feeling in my chest that no matter how long I waited, he was going to pick up the phone. Got a call the next day from my middle school teacher, who also regularly checked in with him, telling me that he had passed away. I got to speak at his service and I'll always remember our time together. R.I.P. Gene. So sorry for your loss. I'm sure he appreciated your friendship as much as you did. It was Mother's Day and I had woken up hungover and had to travel up to St Andrews from Edinburgh from my girlfriend's. I had work in the morning that I could see far enough. When I got on the bus, I sat down and suddenly felt a sharp pain in my shoulder. I thought nothing of it and fell asleep. I woke up and stared out at the grey little towns I passed through. I remember feeling very sad. I'd been away from home so long and I missed being with the family. The pain came back then and started in my elbow and fingers too. In that instant I started crying because I just knew that it was cancer. I was 24. I pushed it to the back of my mind for weeks, then saw my GP, a physiotherapist and 2 shoulder specialists. I eventually convinced myself that it was a pulled ligament or trapped nerve, but then after 2 months of waiting and a bone biopsy I was told I had a high-grade stage 2 osteosarcoma on my upper humerus. 6 months later, 1 successful 4-quarter amputation and some lung metastasis thrown in for fun, and I'm sitting here completely bald, high as a kite, telling the internet I have cancer. Things are looking up though. My love to each and every one of you. Great big warm hug. I was accidentally given a massive morphine overdose in hospital. I was in the process of being moved from one ward to another and knew there was a really good chance I would be left alone for a while because the staff were really busy. I could feel myself becoming amazingly, intensely relaxed, and trying to keep myself awake enough to let a staff member know what had happened and how I'd been overdosed. Was given 10 mls of morphine rather than 0.5 mls. Was really hard. It kinda sucked that they didn't believe me, but once I let them know that I was a midwife and I wasn't kidding around, they took me seriously. The next few hours, including a medical emergency team call, are very, very hazy in my mind. My grandma and me were in the Corolla, she's driving, when the light turned green at a traffic light stop. She paused for about 4 seconds, enough to get the car behind us to honk. When I told her to go, she told me to wait. Something felt out of place. Then, out of the blue, an Impala blasted through the intersection. Had we actually gone when the light turned green, the Impala would have T-boned us. Apparently my grandma first learned to ride a boat, then a moped, and then a car. A huge part of driving a boat is to have foresight because boats don't stop as quickly as a car. Made her a wonderful driver and could park perfectly, drive perfectly, and unlike most grandmas, she's not a slowpoke driver, just cautious and super predictable to others. I would have given the guy behind me a big ol' thumbs up after the car whizzed by. Came home very late one night. My parents and sister were already asleep. House felt funny. Dogs were barking in a strange way. Looked around and noticed that my stepmother's car was not in the driveway but her purse was in the kitchen. My dad's wallet was not on its usual place. Caught someone creeping around in the backyard. The commotion woke everyone up. Creeper was one of my sister's friends. Turns out, her friends decided to break in due to the fact that my parents never locked the doors and the dogs all knew them. Steal my dad's cash and credit cards and take my stepmother's car for a joyride. Since she drove a Toyota Corolla, I have no idea why. We found the car in the next subdivision. Why Creeper Boy was not with his buddies. He was figured he could double back and spend some quality time with my sister, and my timing was just about perfect. He ended up rolling on his buddies and getting a reduced sentence. His parents were pissed at me more for injuring their little boy than they were at him for breaking into people's houses and stealing cars. Yeah, his parents' attitude is definitely what got him that way. Enabling parents create criminals. Very would be an exaggeration, but after my mother went to bed each night my dad would go out to his car beside the driveway and talk on the phone for about 15 minutes. I outed him. He had been having an affair for about 10 years. 10 freaking years. I was walking back to my dorm from class and had a gut feeling that I needed to see my friend right away. I walked into his dorm room and found him on the floor seizing. He is fine now, but it was still weird that I just knew something was wrong before I had seen him at all that day. My wife and I were renting for a few years when we decided to take the steps to buy our own house. We had enough for a deposit and had a mortgage quote arranged. We went to look at a number of houses and found one that we really liked, so decided to put our offer in. We were told that this was most likely going to be accepted, but they were going to wait a couple of days before deciding. That evening I sat in bed reading when I had a horrible feeling that something wasn't right. The next day I told my wife that I wasn't sure about it and convinced her that we needed to retract our offer. So we did. The next 2 weeks were a nightmare. Within 2 days of pulling out of this offer my wife was made redundant. totally by surprise, and she hadn't been working at the company long enough to get much of a payout. A week later our car broke down and was beyond repair, barring spending more than the car was worth. We really struggled for the next year or so and would never have been able to pay off a mortgage. We are in a much better place now, but we know that if I hadn't had that moment we would have been screwed. This one made my heart warm. I'm glad to hear things worked out. I hope you're in a lovely house now. When I was in college I had a really weird class and work schedule that resulted in me usually taking my dog for her nightly walk around 3 or so in the morning. There was a giant parking structure for the college right by its baseball field, and I would usually cut through there and let my dog run around on the field before circling back to my apartment. One night on the way over, I heard a faint humming in the parking garage, followed by some sort of weird almost alarm sounding noise. Being the horror movie victim that I am, I started walking towards the sound, which meant walking down to the lowest level, which was one below street level. When I got down to the ramp my dog started to get visibly stressed, whining and sort of bouncing around, looking at me repeatedly. I started to really get stressed out at this point, but pressed on. When I got down the ramp, I looked around and saw behind it a small golf cart, which on its own wasn't that weird because the school's maintenance staff used them all the time. This golf cart, however, was on and running, which was producing the humming noise, but with no driver. I walked over to it and behind it was one of the Home Depot buckets tipped over, with trash scattered around. Before I could really wonder what was going on, I heard the alarm sort of sound again, only this time I recognized it. I went a little further around to the elevators and found a man unconscious inside one, blocking the door, which was repeatedly tried to close but couldn't. Once I was down there near it I knew what the sound was because we used to block it in the dorms all the time waiting for friends. At this point my dog was going nuts. I put her leash over one of those parking poles to stop people from hitting things and approached the man. I didn't know CPR at the time, but I checked if he was breathing. He was, so I quickly called 911. Fortunately I had service and the campus police station was literally a 2-minute walk from there. A couple police officers arrived quickly and began to administer CPR, and an ambulance arrived shortly after. I had to hang around for a while and explain what happened. The stressful part was not finding out if he was okay until several days later. I called the campus police station and they said they couldn't share his specific medical situation, but told me he was okay and would likely return to work at some point. I'm guessing he had a heart attack, but I'll never know for sure. I never saw him again. Your dog is like frick that guy. One night while I was home alone I was feeling oddly anxious for a few hours. Like every sound I heard seemed suspicious. Later while I was trying to sleep I look out my window and see someone just standing on the sidewalk in front of our house. It's likely that he was there for a while. Just after I notice him he comes up to the door and starts knocking, which freaks out my dog and makes him start barking, which he normally doesn't do when people come to the door. So in a panic I start heading out of the back of the house while calling my parents. At first they don't really believe it's an issue, but I insist that it's not normal. They rush home and my dad confirms my suspicions that it was my sister's abusive ex-husband. So my dad takes care of things and sends him on his way. He has been harassing us for quite some time, but now he's homeless, so trying to get a restraining order has been a struggle. He likely wasn't planning anything violent, but it was definitely the first time I've sensed something being wrong. And it really freaked me out just how much I felt it that night. My neighbor's ex was harassing her for a while and then he became homeless. He broke in and waited for her to come home, then he shot her and himself. Sometimes when people feel like they have nothing left to lose they really go off the deep end. I came down to my kitchen to find my mom's cup of tea sitting on the counter, full and ice cold. She was sitting at the bottom of the steps down to her room and she didn't look good. She told me she just got dizzy and needed to sit down. The more I pestered her, the more she told me not to worry, she just needed to lie down for a bit. When I checked on her a couple of hours later, she'd died in her sleep. I know something happened when she was making her tea. I just don't know what, but seeing it sitting there gave me a panicky feeling. I wish I'd ignored her when she said I'm fine, just let me lay down for a little bit. I've never told anyone this. When I was very little, I used to go visit my great-gran each week. One day, as we said goodbye, I kissed great gran on the cheek and a thought came through my mind that this was probably the last kiss I'll give her. I shook it off, but then she passed away, of course, before our next visit. I haven't thought about it too hard for years, but reading everyone else's stories just brought it back. I don't know what to do, say or think about it. It's really never happened again. This is a more recent one. Past 2 years I have been having this feeling that my mother or father was about to pass away, and as the days got closer and closer to 2018, I decided to act on those fears. At the time I was living and working overseas, and had a very bad relationship with my father. My sister also had an even worse relationship with him. Well, around this time last year I moved back to the USA to, above many other things, make an attempt at mending our relationship and to work hard to get my sister on board. And that feeling of dread that I would never talk to him again kept getting stronger and stronger. Eventually, earlier this year, we all did become closer. My father remarried at the age of 65. I couldn't attend the wedding, but my sister did. And for a second I kinda felt that maybe I was just acting on weird impulses. I talked to him right before his honeymoon to Jamaica, and he sounded excited and giddy as a kid, and that is mostly because he had never traveled outside the USA and was deathly afraid of airplanes. That was the last time I talked to him. He passed away 2 weeks later to unknown causes. In 2014, when that year's X-Men movie came out, I went to go see it with my best friend. 2/3 RDs of the way through, I felt the most off I've ever felt. Sick, chills, feverish, gut drop, time warped, everything. I peeked at my phone and I had dozens of texts, missed calls, and voicemails. My dad had passed away. Sorry for your loss. The highway that I take home from work had just been repaved and none of the lines were painted on yet, except for the lines in between each lane. There were no lines painted for the shoulders yet, but plenty of space to pull over to the shoulder part of the highway without impeding traffic. On one particular day, there was a city truck parked in the shoulder. I got over to the left lane to give them plenty of space, but knew that the guy on the driver's side opened his door way too wide for being next to 70+ mph traffic and was walking way too close to that traffic. I immediately thought that that wouldn't end well. I get home, and as I'm watching the news an hour later, there was a crash on that highway, at that spot I passed, involving the driver of the city truck. Someone hit him. He was dead on the scene. They, I'm assuming his co-workers, friends, and family, put up a memorial of him at the exact spot that I passed him. To this day, I still get over to the left lane when I'm passing him. The lines for the shoulders were painted on the next day. This happened in Ohio a few months ago, late summer I think, so we pass on the left, which is why I gave him room by getting over to the left lane. Move over or slow down is a law here. I move over when possible. Slow down when moving over is not possible. I'd rather not be the cause of someone not going home to their family that night. I'm not sure what happened to the guy that hit him, but a quick search of his name revealed that no charges were in the works a few days after this happened. I think of the dude daily as I pass his memorial, and hope he didn't suffer too bad. I'm always annoyed when people don't move over for cars on the side of the road. Sometimes it's just not possible due to traffic, but normally it's such an easy thing to do and can save a life. My mom called me when I was out with a friend. She told me my brother didn't come home last night. She was very worried, even though this is not the weirdest thing for a 21-year-old. I went straight home. We both felt like something bad had happened. At home, his phone was on the couch in the living room, so we couldn't contact him. Called the police etc. A week of investigation later, his body was found. He had drowned himself in a nearby lake. Miss him every day for almost 3 years now. That's horrible. I'm sorry you lost your brother. The other 4 starters on my basketball team and our coach died in a car accident 22 years ago this past Saturday, the 8th of December, 1996. In the week leading up to the trip, we all had some sort of Final Destination style premonition that it was going to happen. Whether it be by dreams or just ill feelings towards it. I was ill the morning of, otherwise I was scheduled to also be in that vehicle. But as a result I was late and they left before the other vehicles. I got to school and traveled with other friends instead. This was about 25 minutes later. We hit a traffic jam about an hour and a half into the trip. My friend's dad said it looks like someone's had an accident. I hope everyone is okay. It wasn't for what felt like an eternity that we could see what happened. I will never forget the moment of absolute terror where my heart just sunk in the sight of my coach's 4WD having been obliterated by a big semi head on. Etched in my memory forever. Rest in peace, my family. That sounds awful. I'm sorry for your loss. Came home from university. Next day my mother says, "Let's sit down. I have to tell you something." I said, "Do you have cancer?" She did. There were prior warnings. For the last 2 months on Skype, my dad had stopped speaking to me almost entirely. I put it down to him not wanting to speak with me. What a relief. PS. Thyroid untreatable. Treatment worked, we think. Thyroid cancer is super beatable, and because of its affinity for iodine, targeting it with radiation is also easy. It's probably the cancer I'd pick should I have to pick one. Things will be a-okay. I was letting my dog back inside. She walked right past me with no tail wagging or happy smile, walked right through the kitchen without wanting a treat, and went straight to her doggy bed. I knew something wasn't right, and within 10 minutes we were in the car to the emergency vet. She had a tumor rupture apparently. It was clear what needed to be done. Still breaks my heart. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.